So anyone who's not familiar with this project, I'm selecting the best of these leeks here to go to seed so I can save seed, which means I'm selecting for certain traits such as height and girth and how straight they are and a few other things which I've talked about in other videos. So today I'm picking the final number. Maybe it's going to be between like 6 and 10 leeks, and I will transfer those into a spot in the garden where they can flower and go to seed. They will be ready in late summer, fall, and then I'll harvest the seeds and I'll have that for sale on my website. At that point, we'll talk about where to go from here with this project. If anywhere, I might just kind of shelve this project actually, but anyone else could take it up and run with it with this seed as a starter. So I'm going to take each one of these out with a good scoop of dirt so I can retain quite a few of the roots. Like I don't want to, totally denude them of roots. And then I'll pick a spot and we'll plant them. Okay, the light's terrible here, but we're just gonna work with it because that's what we have to work with. Let's take a look at some of these. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and I spotted one more over there. I may just trim this down to about 10. In a way, the more the better. I had a guy leave a comment on one of my blog posts about leeks that it'd be best with onions to save large quantities, like maybe even 100. And I was thinking, well, that doesn't make sense because home gardeners would save these. I mean, these varieties originally were developed by small-scale growers, not huge market interests. All vegetable varieties. And his answer to that was that people used to trade seed, right? So I would be growing my crop here, and my gene pool might be limited to a small number of leeks, but then I would be, I could trade out seed with other people to keep fresh genes coming in. So that totally makes sense to me, and I think that this selection right here, I mean, I've narrowed it down that way. A lot of times I save like 8 leeks at a time for many generations, so it's probably ready for some fresh genes, either from Bulgarian Giant or from another variety to start breeding in new genes. Anyway, something to think about. So let's take a look at some of these. Here's a really nice specimen. This isn't the tallest ever, but if I really think about it, I'm not sure tall is really what I should be going for, because these short leeks are less likely to fall over. They may be hardier, and usually you're trading, you can see, this one's tall, but it's also skinnier, and usually you're trading one for the other. My original idea was to breed for both, but now I'm kind of thinking that these mid-sized ones, about 18 inches long or so, are really pretty good. They're tall enough not to get a bunch of dirt down here in the leaves, which is one of the main reasons I like these tall varieties. They're still self-blanching. They still have a long stem. There's plenty of leek here because it's so fat. Like I can't even reach my fingers around this. So the other things I like about this one is it's straight, and it's got this thing here where the leaves are really clasped tightly up here, and they kind of hold all this together and keep this sheath on here which blanches the stalk. And you can see this one doesn't quite have that. It kind of like, the leaves are more separated. Like these, for some reason, they're more tight up here at the top. I'm not sure exactly how that works, but it does seem to work. So I like that one a lot. This one I'm on the fence about, but I'll probably use it. It's very rigid, like very, very rigid. And I think that's good because it keeps it upright and keeps it from kind of like sinking and bending over. This is selected out of the 0% charcoal bed. I'm on the fence about using it, but this is like the best I got out of that bed is these here. And some of these might even be out of the 5%, which was also pretty small, unless the leeks that were right up against the 10% charcoal section did as well as the ones in the 10% charcoal section. But for the most part, this is kind of more what I was getting out of there. So I'm also on the fence about using these, but they're the best ones in there, and the genes are probably good. This one's a little crooked, but that's probably environmental, and otherwise it's great. It's got girth, it's got height. Here's something closer to what my ideal has been. So this is tall, it's still pretty fat, it's a little curved, but I think that's just environmental. It's still very rigid, like it's not, sometimes the layers get kind of loose and floppy. And then it's also got the thing where everything's really clasped up tight here. So all this stuff is, you know, blanched down here. And I had already stripped some of the old leaves off of this. So this is probably about the best specimen in here. Maybe if I'm thinking in terms of length and not girth. But like I said, I'm kind of tending now towards leeks like this, which has all those traits, but maybe it's a little bit shorter. And honestly, that's probably a good thing. Because I do sometimes have the really tall skinny ones just sort of flop over, especially in heavy freezes. So I really like this one too. Here's another example of a very tall one. It looks taller because I stripped all the outside leaves off just to show you what that looks like. So that's a win or two for sure. So I'm gonna get at least 10 out of this whole lot. They're gonna be planted here on a fairly close spacing, probably like 10 or 12 inches apart. Kind of as close as I can fit them reasonably. It'll probably be like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2 staggered in a grid pattern, because that's the way I can fit the most in. They'll all go in on this end of the bed, and then we'll mulch them, and that's it. Wait. I'm just going to clean these up a little bit, take off some dead and extraneous and broken leaves. If nothing else, just so it looks better. They can afford to lose a few leaves. Might even do them some good. See, at first I should flatten this off nice and flat, because I'm going to put all kinds of amendments on here, and if it's not flat, they'll kind of fall into the low spots and collect instead of spreading out evenly over the ground. So yeah, I don't want to mess with these again. So that means I'm going to put on probably enough fertilizer to get them through the season. I might hit them again later, but I know realistically that I might not get to it, just like I didn't take very good care of them through last summer. So wood ashes. Potassium, calcium, and trace minerals. Trees spend their lives mining the things that make a tree out of the soil. And all that stuff is in here. It's like an essence of, you know, the minerals that trees need to grow, plants need to grow. Also got a bucket of chicken poo. This has been made into manure tea several times. So, you know, I put the poo in the bucket, add water, pour the water off, use that as fertilizer, do that several times, and then I'm left with this sludge that has, you know, most of the nutrients have been leached out, but there's still a lot of stuff in there. But it's really valuable as a mulch. What I call, I've been calling manure mats or shit mulching. Ha ha ha. And it's full of feathers and straw and good stuff. You can just pour it on with a bucket too. It's just the watering can delivers it a little more finely. I have 2 buckets of this, so I'm just going for a thin layer over the whole soil. And then we're going to add more stuff. I wouldn't say it smells good, but it kind of smells good to a gardener, because real gardeners know that the smell of poo is the smell of plants growing. Coffee grounds, good source of long-term nitrogen. And yes, that's a lot of coffee grounds, probably over half a bucket. Yeah, since there's a lot of green grass, I'm gonna go get some green grass too. Every once in a while someone asks me, why don't you use mulch, or you should use mulch, or even sort of do you know what mulch is. And I do use mulch. I just use it really selectively. I don't like heavy mulches on my beds all year because it encourages things like pill bugs and pincer bugs and voles that then will march out from their happy mulchy home and munch all my young seedlings. And I think I will put a heavy mulch on this. You know, nothing's going to eat these. They're going to be here for the entire summer. A good thick mulch will help prevent drying out. If I have something on top of this grass, then the grass can start rotting down underneath instead of just being dry on the surface, and that'll feed the plants, because every time I water through the mulch and hit that rotting grass, it's going to carry leach nutrients out and bring them down to the roots. I'm just going to add a layer of oak leaves. So this is just a corral, because I know that when these start to go to seed, they're going to get really heavy and they're going to start falling over. And this simple arrangement will keep them from falling out into the path. These should be good to go for the season. I may fertilize them, but I'll probably just flake out and not fertilize them again. But I put all those coffee grounds in there. There's grass, and they should be good. I also put a cross of string here, so that, say, when this one grows up and it starts to flop over, it can only flop, you know, that far. And this dirt will go back into the old bed where we dug out a bunch of dirt with the leeks, because there's a bunch of craters in there.